Well, Stefan Baskerville is Principal Director of Unions and Business at the New Economics Foundation, a think tank. Stefan, we've got Dara Khosrowshahi in London. He's coming with a very different tone, a very different approach to that of his predecessor, Travis Kalanick, isn't he? Much more conciliatory and apologetic. Do you think that will help smooth the way to perhaps getting the licence back?
I think that's certainly what he's hoping for. I mean, I think what you're referring to is an indicator of how important London is as a market to Uber. You know, the Financial Times reported last week that it's one of the few places where Uber does make money, because it's not good at making profit in the United States or in India, some of its biggest markets, but it does make money in London. And so Uber really can't risk losing the business that it has in London, and I think hence the conciliatory tone and the kind of negotiations that we're seeing beginning today.
Of course, not just of interest to the board of Uber, not just of interest to the people who use Uber to get home after a night out, for example, but also to the 40,000 or so drivers they have in London. Because the situation about what happens to them is quite worrying if the licence doesn't get renewed.
Yes, although I do think digital platforms are here to stay. I think if Uber were to fail to get its licence renewed, another digital platform would step in, and I think those drivers would be able to find work with someone else. But you're right that we should be thinking carefully about their livelihoods, because I've spoken to drivers in London, and you know the kinds of things that they reported to me about working for Uber is that a larger and larger share of each fare was being taken by the firm, and they were seeing less money coming in, that they had to work a very large number of hours each week to break even, and that had an impact on the time they had with family. But there are also bigger questions afoot about the extent to which Uber honours its obligations to them in terms of employment law, and you've seen those issues going through the courts recently. So I kind of think, you know, the chief executive does have a whole series of issues to address. Some of them were outlined by a police inspector to Transport for London around passenger safety and the failure of Uber to report 6 sexual assaults and 2 public order offences. But there are these broader concerns, both around honouring obligations in terms of employment rights to drivers and, of course, around the extent to which Uber pays tax in the UK. And I suspect that all of these issues kind of connect together. And the chief executive will need to address them in order to get the licence back. We think at the New Economics Foundation that there's space for an alternative to Uber that would see drivers taking a stake. You know, the platforms are here to stay, and it is possible to develop alternatives where drivers are able to share the profits that accrue from that kind of business, and that's something that we've been piloting in the north of England.
OK, Stefan, thanks very much indeed. Stefan Baskerville from the New Economics Foundation. Thank you.
Great to be.